This is Lightning Power Lunch on the Lightning Audio Network with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli.
I think honestly just excitement, never being around for an opening night and not really knowing what to expect with the crowd, but if they're anything like they were last year, it's going to be a really fun night, and hopefully that place is rocking loud.
I think it will be. Gage.
Yes.
Why wouldn't it? Anytime the opener in any sport is special. It is. I've always said, and it is Power Lunch. Glad everybody is here. I'm Greg Linnelli, along with Dave Mishkin. For those who are just listening only, Steve Versnick, our producer. I think for me, I break up the seasons, mainly hockey, but when I was really into the baseball space, you have opening day, which is a big deal, mainly because it's a lot of people take off in baseball. Kids go with their dads, maybe to go see the game. But it's also, everybody's even. And for teams that aren't very good, man, it gives you some hope, And after 2 weeks when the Pirates were, 2-10, that quickly faded. I acknowledge that. But that was always special. The All-Star breaks can be, but the trade deadline was always something you circled. And then the start of the playoffs. It's almost like opening day on steroids. Because now the season is really about to begin. And that's the best time of the year.
And Coop was asked about opening night. And the Lightning don't always open the season at home. This year they are.
Yeah.
And he referred to it as like Christmas morning. So he's excited. The players are excited. We heard from Gage Gonsalves. It's probably easy to forget because he had such an impactful second half of the year with the Lightning last year that Gonsalves has not been involved in an NHL opening night before. So this will be his first. But we have to start, Greg, with me issuing a mea culpa for me, but I think by extension maybe you and a lot of fans who jumped to a conclusion that may not have been completely accurate when the Lightning claimed Curtis Douglas on waivers. And I think the conclusion that a lot of us jumped to was that this was in some way, shape, or form a reaction to what had happened with the preseason games against the Panthers. That the Lightning were like, okay, these two games happened. We see this 6'9", 240-plus pound guy on waivers. Let's grab him. And then I think the questions that followed were where I was even saying, like, are they going to keep this guy until they play the Panthers? He's taking a roster spot that other guys might have gotten who showed well in the preseason for the Lightning at the forward position. Those players have been sent to Syracuse or are, in the case of Girgensons is injured. So there is an open spot there with Zemgus being out. Unfortunately, it looks like it's going to be week to week. And I think that was the assumption. Certainly, we talked about it that way. I think a lot of fans reacted to the news that way. We had the one fan saying, did they actually make the claim after they got fined from the league and, go Coop and all of this? And I, at least right now, I'm going to take all of that back because going on the show yesterday, I'm like, Douglas looks like he's sliding in as the 13th forward. That's the way I saw it at practice at the TGH Iceplex yesterday. Curtis Douglas is in tonight. He is the fourth-line left winger. Jack Finley is going to be the lone healthy scratch. Lightning are also scratching Moser because he's suspended. And the other guys are injured, and they're going to scratch a goalie. Vasi is going to start. I'm presuming Johansson is going to be backing up. So what do we make of this? Here is a guy who basically has had a whirlwind 48 hours, was driving from Utah to Tucson, their minor league team, stopped in Vegas to get a coffee, got the news that he had been claimed on waivers, grabs a middle-of-the-night flight from Vegas to Tampa, gets to Tampa, has a practice yesterday. The next day, he's in. He's making his NHL debut. And he has had no training camp with the Lightning. This is a heavy lift for him. Mm-hmm. But he is super excited. I had a chance to be involved in meeting him today. I was there as he answered questions in the scrum, and then I introduced myself and asked him a couple of questions, which I can share some of what he said to the media. But he is just a bundle of excitement and energy. He's got, family coming in, et cetera, et cetera. So I repeat the question, what do we make of this? What I make of this is the Lightning, he's not some new guy. To us, he's new. You're like, who is this guy? I was the same way. I hadn't followed what was happening with Tucson in the AHL the last few years.
And shame on us for not.
But the Lightning have scouts everywhere. They know that this player is out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what this shows is the Lightning are really interested in adding this player. And I have to wonder if Curtis Douglas had been a restricted free agent who had not been qualified, kind of like a Peltier or a Holmberg, and become a UFA, or simply had been a UFA, if the Lightning wouldn't have gone out and tried to get this guy.
Yeah.
Because not only is he's in ahead of Finley, who had a very good preseason. So, again, we'll see how it plays out. What I can tell you about the guy is he has a very bubbly, big personality. Pat Maroon, ironically, was in the locker room today because Maroon is working the broadcast tonight on the pregame intermission panel with Braden Coburn and Paul Kennedy. And, Douglas was like wide-eyed to meet Maroon, who went up and introduced himself. I just met Pat Maroon. So he's not Maroon. Like Maroon, by the time he arrived with the Lightning, had a lot of experience and, was a chirper. I don't know if Douglas is a chirper, but Douglas has an energy about him, which I think the Lightning probably find appealing. And so he's in tonight. And I think that it, at least for me, made me rethink kind of what went into this waiver claim. This was not the Lightning saying, we want to add a big body, and, this guy who's 6'9" is available. And we think he might be able to help us. I think it was more that, like, we like Curtis Douglas, who happens to be 6'9". And because he is the guy who is available, we want to put in a waiver claim on him. So good for him, good for the Lightning, and good luck to him tonight.
It's a nice story. We're not supposed to know, me and you, all of the minor leaguers out there.
Right.
We understand that's the front office's job. We can only take the information that's given to us and process it. I'm not going to apologize because I think he was acquired, not necessarily to handle the Florida Panthers, but you mentioned 6'9". That's attractive. He also can fight. That's attractive. When the Lightning have been really good, they've had guys to handle that business and make everybody on that bench a little bit taller. All right? That's what this guy does. Now, look, he may go out there and score 15 goals this year. He may show that he can play more so than you hit Kucherov, you're going to have to answer. But clearly, to me, yes, he's 6'9", and that's maybe what attracted to them. But it also tells me, processing everything that's gone on over the last couple of years, if this guy can skate a little bit, if this guy shows any ability whatsoever, make no mistake, this guy is going to protect our players on the ice. And I think, just take a look at the guy he's replacing in the lineup, who is big, probably has maybe a different skill set that some of us thought could help this team, and still may, in Jack Finley, taking the faceoffs, being responsible defensively. Clearly, at least tonight, they thought enough of this guy with his skill set, but I think also what they do need, which is an element of physical play, to leapfrog a player who maybe doesn't have that necessarily, although I think he can drop the gloves, but isn't known for it. This guy comes in and he says, okay, I know my role. I know what I have to do. And as long as I do that, I'm staying in this lineup. And I think this is accumulation of the last couple of years, potentially other teams maybe taking some liberties at the Lightning players. They do always respond. They don't back down. But it's different having a Brandon Hagel respond than somebody who is 6'9". And if that means this guy's in the lineup and plays 8 to 9 minutes a night, but provides a security blanket for the star players, partner, I'm okay with that. Now, does that mean this guy just can't go up and down the ice and just take up a jersey? I think that's a fair point. So to your point, there has to be something else this guy has that they like, that they're intrigued about, to not only bring him on the team, but to have him in opening night. That's a big deal. I mean, we didn't see the guy. We were talking about how competitive this competition was in the bottom six.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, you bring a guy coming in with no NHL experience at 6'9", who's going to come in and play on a fourth line. So to your point, absolutely, there is something else beyond the physical play and the toughness that he brings. But in my opinion, that's a big reason why he's on not only on the team, but in the lineup.
Well, look, I agree with what you're saying. I think I was just trying to make the point that it wasn't that the Lightning were looking for a 6'9", 240-pound player, and one became available. I think that they knew about this guy, and he became available.
Right.
And he does fill a role that they want filled. But if some other 6'9", 240-pound player might have become available, I'm not sure the Lightning would have put the claim in. That's kind of what I'm saying. And the other part of this is you might look at the Ottawa Senators and be like, do they have an AJ Greer? Do they have a player like that? I mean, yeah, every team has some tough guys. They made a trade for Curtis McDermott, who is a big, strong left winger during the preseason. They made a trade with the Devils. They traded Zach McEwen, who can handle himself as well. So kind of an apples to apples sort of trade. So it's not like they don't have anybody. They have Nick Cousins, and he has dropped the gloves before. But I'm not sure you would look at the Senators and say, we really need, if you want to use the word, like a protector, right? I'm not sure that this is that sort of game. So I think it's actually more about
he can play.
They really like the player. They want to get him in. They want to see how he does. But let's not get over our skis on expecting too much. This is almost like a guy arriving at the deadline, getting dropped in, completely new environment, new teammates, new system, and add on top of that, he's making his NHL debut. So let's see how he does. But it's certainly a great story.
It's a great story, and I think you're right. I mean, for the Tampa Bay Lightning, you have to have an element of skill set beyond up and down, up and down, up and down. I would think for a guy who had no training camp with them to come in and be one of your top 12 at the forward position. Make no mistake. We will find out, I think, how this is going to transpire. We'll get a pretty good idea how well does he skate. It's a big part of what the Lightning want, even if it's on your fourth line. I don't want to reinvent the wheel here, though. I do think this is about making potentially a statement to anybody out there that, okay, we kind of let this go because we felt like we didn't need it. We had a lot of guys who could stick up for themselves, who were tough. Nick Paul's tough. Cirelli's tough. Hagel's tough. I don't know if you want them fighting or having to answer all the time. I'm not saying that's going to happen every game, but the Florida game certainly didn't put those concerns to bed. They're going to be out there. And so if you can find a guy who potentially addresses that problem and can play, this goes back to what you just said. He's got to play a little bit. But if you can find somebody who's a big, bad you-know-what, and you can put him in the lineup, or maybe he's your spare forward and you put him in whenever you want to, that's okay. And there are a lot of people, mainly fans, who felt like, I mean, you and I take these questions all the time about, do they need a Pat Maroon type? Do they need a Luke Shen type? And our question, or our answer always to that was usually twofold. One, the Lightning have enough guys who can handle themselves, but they're not traditional enforcers. And maybe that's wrong to label Douglas that way because we haven't seen him play, but we've seen clips of, and this is a guy, had a couple fights in preseason. I mean, that's probably what he's brought here to do in large part. But if you don't have to have your guys answering that all the time, look, eventually Hagel and Ekblad are going to go. They're just going to go. I'm anticipating it, and everybody else is probably anticipating. Worst kept secret out there, by the way.
Yes.
But you know where this comes in, and I'm using Florida as an example, but it could be any team that has somebody who takes some liberties at the Lightning star players. What Douglas can prevent is, okay, Hagel and Ekblad had their run in here. It's done. And if one of you try and take another shot at anybody, you're going to have to mess with me. And that's where I think some of the messaging comes from with a guy like Douglas. I hope he's a guy. Heck, who's the one listener that likes to talk about the power play net front presence? Hey, you want a net front presence? Put Douglas in front of that goaltender, right?
Well, at the end of practice, they were working a drill. Dan Heino was actually working the drill. They had guys standing in front of a net. They actually had the net at the red line, like up against the boards at the red line. They had a goalie in the net.
Yeah.
And they had guys practicing tips. I saw Bjorkstrand was tipping pucks. Geeky was tipping pucks. Douglas was tipping pucks, and he was tipping pucks. And I was just watching him. He's like, he is a big man standing in front of the net. The other team's net is what I'm talking about. I just want to share one thing that he told us.
Please.
So in one 3-month span when he was younger, he grew 8 inches.
Wow.
8 inches in 3 months. So I think he said when he showed up as a 16-year-old, because I asked then, have you grown, like after this huge growth spurt, did you continue growing? Because when you grow that much, like you have to adjust to balancing on your skates. It's almost like
hard.
All the proportions got messed up. And he's like, I really didn't gain a lot of weight. So I showed up as a 16-year-old. I was 6'8", like 180 or something. I may be getting the weight wrong, but it was under 200. And so, they talk about Bambi on skates, right? Like, I mean, he really had to kind of continue to grow into his body. And what I asked was, like, since you've been a pro player, have you continued to grow? He's like, that was when he said I was 6'8" at 16. So now he's 6'9". So since then, he's only gained an inch in height, but he's added a lot of weight. And he's like, that has really been my objective. Everyone told me, like, you have to gain weight to fill out your body. If you're 6'8", 6'9", you need to be heavier. And now he's, as we talked about,
he can just come over and sit with me for a day.
Pounds.
We'll snack and put on some weight. Don't we all want
that?
that?
Can you imagine that, though, growing 8 inches in 3 months?
I mean, that's
like, how many different
crazy.
sets of clothes did he go through? In that
really. Hey, it took me to grow 8 inches in 8 years. I mean, he's doing it in 3 months. God bless the guy. Yeah. But you know what, though? Credit to him, because you mentioned the balance component of things. When you're tall like that, it's awkward. And now you factor in skating. I'll be curious to see what that skating does look like, because as a big man to get going,
that was the point of the question I asked, which was like, as long as he's not still growing, like, since he's been a pro player, he is basically set at his height. Yeah. And so, you gain a little weight. I think it didn't all happen at once. You slowly got heavier, but, it's not like some new adjustment. He's had to like continually recalibrate how he needs to balance himself. It happened all basically at once.
Yeah.
And then he got used to it, and he's kind of been set ever since. And I will say this, for what it's worth, I mean, the AHL is not the NHL, but I mean, it's not like he's finishing AHL seasons with like 1 goal, 2 goals. Like, he's hit double-digit goals.
No, I mean,
and we'll get to know more about his experience in the A, and, like what was his role? How was he used?
Sure.
Did he have opportunities to score? Was he in front of the net?
Listen, his role is going to be defined pretty quickly here. He doesn't have to be a scorer. I'm stating the obvious for you and for our audience. It's really to go out there. What's the one thing we always talk about, the third and fourth lines, particularly the fourth lines? Don't get scored on, correct?
Yes.
Be hard to play against. And I think a guy like Douglas, go finish your checks and keep it simple. So you get cross center ice, dump it in, and let's see if you can get after it. Now, I've never seen him play, so maybe he has a little more dangle to his game. I've got to think a bigger guy like that, keep it simple, stupid. And I think that's something that maybe could bode well. Who are his line mates again tonight? Geeky, right? I would assume
and
Geeky.
Holmberg. Geeky and Holmberg.
So that, honestly, you could do a lot worse playing with a fourth line. I mean, that's a veteran and a young guy who's got pedigree. By the way, Geeky also has snarl to his game. That might be an interesting dynamic, having those guys go out and almost hit everything in sight. And I'd be curious to see how Geeky's game plays off of Douglas's, understanding, again, when you have a big guy like 6'9" who is on your ice, it does open things up. It really does.
Well, interestingly, he started his AHL career with Belleville, which is Ottawa's affiliate. He got into 11 games with them. So he was drafted by Dallas, and it sounded
Fourth
like
round,
they didn't sign him. So that's disappointing, right? So, he kind of had to pull himself back up. He signed an AHL deal, it sounded like, first with Belleville. That was in that weird shortened season. He also was playing overseas. And then it was the next year, 21-22, he spent the whole year with the Toronto Marlies. He had 13 goals. So they ended up moving him to Arizona in the Connor Timmins trade. And the last couple of years he's been in Tucson, or the last 3 years. So he was single-digit goals year 1 and year 2 with Tucson. Last year he had 10 goals and 23 points. So
how many games has he played at the AHL level?
Well, last year he played 63, but I mean, if you add them all up.
Yeah, add them all up. I mean, it's over 100, I would think, right?
130, 140.
Yeah,
I'd say about 160.
That's
yeah,
not
right
bad.
around the same range where Finley is at, because we talked about him, right?
That's not bad.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, too, didn't we have somebody ask if Douglas and Geeky knew each other?
Yeah,
so maybe
they do. Yeah, so they would have had camps together, and then there was one year that Geeky joined Tucson for the playoffs after his junior season ended. So
that would have been interesting.
Brief interaction, but now they're line mates, at least for tonight.
That's kind of neat. So, that's look, I don't want to make too much of this because we haven't seen him play, and we're talking about somebody we don't know what the impact's going to look like. Mm-hmm. We can just give you an opinion. And the opinion, I think, is playing out the way it probably is here, where the Lightning like the skill set and the makeup. But where I may differ from you, partner, and maybe not, I think the skill set is something they've lacked the last couple of years. And that if he addresses that, in addition to being able to play a little bit, it speaks to me that, yes, this is something they were trying to figure out, bringing somebody in. And this guy was somebody they liked. They absolutely liked. And they said, yeah, this is worth a flyer. I think also, too, and maybe a little bit of the uncomfortable truth is they were willing to give Finley his spot. And Finley was somebody we had talked a lot about in training camp with the face-offs, and his size, that might be somebody who could help the team. And I think that still could be the case. But in terms of who brings a more interesting skill set for the Lightning, because we always know face-offs are important, they do feel like having a big body to answer any nefarious acts is just as important, might not even be a little bit more. And that's why I think we're seeing him in the lineup.
Well, look, this is the last thing I'll say about it as it relates to Douglas and maybe tonight, and then we can get to questions or
we
touch
will.
on some
We've got a bunch
topics.
coming in here, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like the Senators are going to have a fourth line. So the two guys I mentioned who are kind of their tougher guys, beefier guys, certainly Curtis McDermott is that. McDermott is on a line with Nick Cousins, not Dylan Cousins, Nick Cousins and Lars Eller. So they have Eller centering their fourth line. So that could be fourth line against fourth line. You're going to see some big guys and tough guys out on the ice at the same time. But I would not classify the Ottawa Senators as a team that looks to go out and intimidate.
No.
They will play tough, certainly, and they're a hard-working team. I mean, they play the Lightning really, really well, but this is not one of those games where you feel like, well, we need to dress a guy to make sure that our players are looked after. So, again, I just go back to it. I think that they really like the player and enough to put a waiver claim in on him and get him here and get him into his NHL debut.
Let's have fun. Bold prediction. First shift, he's going. We'll see how that plays out. And we've got Bugsy Malone in the radio booth tonight.
Yeah, unfortunately, Phil's under the
Espo.
weather.
Yeah.
I think he got caught out in one of those rainstorms, so hopefully he is on the mend. But yeah, so I mean, they have their panel of analysts on the Spot 66. They have a rotation of, I think, 4 or 5 of them. So tonight it's Pat Maroon and Braden Coburn, but Ryan Malone is one of the
That'll be cool.
The former Lightning players that will be used in that capacity, but he is not working tonight. So we were able to get him to bring him in from the bullpen. And this might be I'm going to have to ask him if he's ever done a game broadcast before. He certainly hasn't with me.
I don't think he did in Pittsburgh. By the way, is everybody okay? A couple Pittsburgh guys in the booth?
Yes. We got our
joke around about that.
So we got our league passes.
Yeah.
I don't know if you get one, but the league passes is basically gets you into any building in the NHL. Okay.
Yeah, I think eventually I do. Steve usually gives me
so
one.
we get our Lightning passes, which you can get into the arena here, but that will not help you to get into the arena like in Montreal, right? You need the league pass. So they arrived. and Steve gave me mine this morning, and they were included with the passes NHL rights holder lanyards. Mm-hmm. And so, do you want a lanyard? I said, yeah, I'll take one. These lanyards were made in Pittsburgh, Greg, because they are black and gold. Like you could be a Pirate, a Steeler, or a Penguin.
I don't want to be a Pirate.
I got to pull out I'm going to pull out my lanyard and show you the color scheme here. It's like you don't want the pass, you just want the lanyard, my friend.
Well,
so
I'll give it to Enzo.
I'm multitasking here.
Yeah, you give me the lanyard, I'll give it to Enzo, and Enzo will be playing around. By the way, I thought you were going to drop the Seinfeld reference about being a pirate.
Look at this baby. Is that not Steeler gold?
I mean, that is
Penguin gold.
Do you need a terrible towel?
Yeah.
What are we doing here? This is crazy. Get Myron Cope. Where is he? All right.
That's an interesting choice, though, for a league-wide lanyard, isn't it?
What does it mean? God, is it a sign? No, it's nothing.
So actually, it's just been reported that somebody at the league office is the father of one of the management people in Pittsburgh. Oh, I'm just having some fun.
Listen,
if you don't know
we have to have
I'm
fun. It's opening night.
Listen back to any one of our shows over the last 3 days.
Oh man, you're going into the enemy's den there, partner.
Not really. I mean,
no.
They're friendly fans. We just happen to disagree on this one item.
We have very friendly fans, and we do have disagreements. Yes. But it would be boring if we all agreed. And I think that makes it a more purposeful talk show. At Bolts Radio, if you want to get involved in the conversation, look at these names also crack me up, by the way. Wooden Whisker says, what are each of you most looking forward to tonight? You want me to go
first?
Yeah,
go
well, Douglas, I mean, I think everybody, just because the size and what's going to happen, I'm interested to see Vasi. Just want to see what it looks like in a game action. And I'm going to be looking at the younger players, the Geekies, the Croziers. Curious to see how that develops. Gonsalves, kind of a full year now. Let's see what this looks like. And, maybe to a lesser extent, Holmberg, because we really didn't get a chance to see him in any preseason action except for the one game. So probably like a lot of fans, I mean, we can talk about defensive structure, the power play. I think that's going to be ongoing. But for me, I want to see the new guy they're bringing in. What's that role going to look like? And Vasi, I just kind of want to see where he is. And, you're always going to keep an eye on him because he's your starter.
Yeah, I think that's where I am as well. I'm curious to see how Vasilevsky looks. I think Vasilevsky is going to be fine as we get into the season. I hope he's fine starting tonight.
Yeah.
But, we can't ignore the fact that he missed most of training camp. So he wasn't getting those reps. He wasn't seeing pucks. Right. He wasn't dealing with activity around him. It was really the end of training camp that he got on the ice, and then he got into the one game where he played 2 periods. So let's see how he does tonight. I think just generally about tonight, like you'd like to get off to a good start. If you lose opening night, look, it's not the end of the world. There were a couple of years ago. I remember the Lightning opened at home against Pittsburgh and they lost.
Right.
But it didn't mean that, they ended up missing the playoffs or anything like that. No. So it's not ideal to lose the opener at home, but it's not the end of the world. Having said that, I would like to see the Lightning get off to a good start.
Yeah.
And hopefully bank 2 points. And Coop was asked about the preseason. He kind of snickered about, 6-1. He's like, there have been a lot of teams that have done really well in the preseason that have missed the playoffs. But he's like, hopefully we can carry forward some of the things that we saw in the preseason, good habits, high energy, high compete. And I'd like to see that too. Mm-hmm. I'd like to see them, playing as much of a buttoned up game as we can expect for game 1 in the regular season.
Tampa Bay on X says, so is Douglas playing tonight? Are they going 12-6 or 11-7?
Well, they can't go 11-7 because Moser is suspended, and they don't have any other defensemen. 12-6. Yeah, I think we spelled that out, didn't we?
Yeah, he's in. Yeah, we did. Yeah. But just to reiterate it, Tampa Bay, we appreciate you. CDB on Facebook says, correct me if I'm wrong, this guy was not good enough to make the Utah roster? Utah? I think they are disrespecting Jack Finley and the other preseason standout players. We shall see tonight. So let me answer that real quick before you get into just because a player isn't a fit for one organization, albeit one that hasn't won as much as Tampa Bay, doesn't mean that player should be relegated to this perception that they can't play for an inferior team. And then he goes to a team like Tampa Bay, somehow that you're getting the leftovers, so to speak, in a roundabout way. Everybody identifies needs. Each organization has a need, and just because, take some of the worst teams in the NHL over the last couple of years, that doesn't mean there's a player on that roster that couldn't help a team who's in the playoffs. We see that all the time. I understand the point that this guy wasn't on the roster per se, but it still goes back to the Lightning have their scouting report department looking at all players, not only at the NHL level, but clearly the AHL level over in Europe and everywhere else. So to answer your question, I think in that analysis, in that question, for me, it hits home harder. There's a reason this guy is brought into the Tampa Bay Lightning in addition to having some sort of skill set on the ice that deals with his stick. I think he was brought in large part because there was a need for them to address what they felt maybe was a perceived lack of enforcer type that could control the flow of the game when things got out of control. And that maybe the skill set wasn't as great or greater between Finley and Douglas, where that really became a hard decision to make. I think Douglas addresses a need, and I think from their actions, it was a need greater than what Finley could provide initially, which was a little bit more of a complete skill set, face-offs, checking, killing penalties. Douglas may provide some of that, maybe, but I don't want to reinvent the wheel here. I think, and we talked about this at the beginning, partner, he was brought in to address a need in a skill set that the Lightning really don't have right now at the NHL level.
And I would answer it this way to the fan who wrote that in. First of all, just because Utah has missed the playoffs for a number of years doesn't mean that Utah doesn't have an up-and-coming team. I think a lot of people are actually pretty high on Utah, which finished higher than a lot of other teams that missed the playoffs in the West last year. They have a crop of good young players, and who knows? We'll see. I mean, they were still in contention. The Lightning and Utah played twice near the end of last year. And if you remember, because we had Matt McConnell join us, like they were still in contention to get into a playoff spot. So they're improving. So, I mean, look, it's never a good idea just to like dismiss another NHL franchise. We don't know what's going on in Utah. Maybe they're going to have a much better year this year. What I took out of it was less that Douglas was not one of their 23 to start the year. It was that he was one of the last guys cut. It's not like he went on waivers, a weekend ago. Remember when most teams made their first big cuts, including the Lightning, after week 1 of the preseason, or even earlier? He stuck around to the very last possible moment before teams had to submit their opening night roster. He went down the same day that Declan Carlisle went down.
Yeah.
Does that mean that Declan Carlisle can't play in the NHL?
Of course not.
I think Declan Carlisle can play in the NHL. So that's the way I look at it. But look, the fan, I'm reading that as the fan is upset that Finley is not in tonight.
Correct.
And Douglas is. Wow. Jack Finley will play. This was a great training camp and preseason for Jack Finley. He made the team. Unlike a lot of other guys that are right now playing in Syracuse. So this is one game, and the players who are not playing tonight for the Lightning, either due to being a healthy scratch, extra, in the case of a goalie, suspended in the case of Moser, or injured, like at some point they will get in. It's just not tonight.
I think that's the part that's hard for some people to grasp, is that how could somebody who doesn't have any NHL experience, basically has been an enforcer, although showed signs last year in the minors of being able to contribute offensively, what was perceived to be a deep prospect pool this year for the Lightning in preseason, how could that person leapfrog a few of these Lightning forwards who maybe acquitted themselves pretty well and were with Tampa Bay the whole preseason?
Yeah.
And that is where it goes back to, I think, a unique skill set. I think they feel strongly this is somebody they need in their lineup. Now, it's one game. I acknowledge that. He could flop tonight, and we see Finley in the next game. I get that. But it is interesting. It's just interesting that a guy, this isn't somebody who has a track record of the NHL. This is somebody that's first taste of the NHL tonight. And he leapfrog a guy who was perceived to have taken the appropriate steps to potentially make opening night. And I think people were shocked by that. And so read into that however people want to. I'm not sure it's an indictment on Finley as it is.
It is not an indictment on
They
Finley.
really like Douglas. That's what I'm taking.
I don't look at it that way at all.
Yeah.
Now, look, as it relates to faceoffs to the right of Vasilevsky tonight, the best faceoff guy on Ottawa actually led the NHL in faceoff percentage last year, Claude Giroux. He's a righty. Right. So the Lightning would be, Giroux can actually take them on the other side too, and he turns his stick around. Remember Belmar used to do that, and Belmar's not the only one, but he's like, I learned that when I was in Philly from Claude Giroux. So Giroux has adopted this technique when he wants to or needs to take a face-off on his weak side. But they have other guys, Ottawa does. They have Stutz Lowe's pretty good in the circle, and Brady Tkachuk does not take a lot of face-offs 5-on-5 unless his centerman gets thrown out because he's a winger, but he takes them on special teams. Brady will take power play face-offs.
Yeah, good point.
Where they're putting him out there to take a draw to the right of the opposing goalie. So for this game tonight, the Lightning have Braden Point as a right-handed face-off guy. That's it. So just like Douglas, as you've pointed out numerous times today, Greg, fills a particular need or role for the Lightning, I do think Finley has a skill set that the Lightning may look to utilize when he gets in, but that's not going to be tonight.
No. It will not.
And they're going to ask other guys, whether it's Pontus Holmberg or Cirelli or Gord, lefties, to try and win a faceoff on their weak side.
So important.
Yeah.
At Bolts Radio. So Boomer had some questions here. There's 4 of them. We kind of touched on most, but let me just run through it, and then if we have anything to say, partner, we can do it. Said, can y'all discuss why Hockey Ops levied the $125,000 fine? Does Hockey Ops usually get involved like this?
Yeah, I don't know about that.
We
Boomer.
don't.
We touched on that, I think, was it yesterday's show or the day before?
Did. They've kind of blended together, but I think we did.
It was reported that the fine was levied by Hockey Ops, and maybe Hockey Ops covers it when it's a team fine or a fine to a coach, if it's not an automatic fine. Sometimes these fines are automatic. Sometimes if a coach gets a little salty in a post-game press conference about the league or referees, the coach will get fined. Maybe that does come from Hockey Ops. Why? We don't know. I did my best to kind of put myself in the league's shoes about like what might have been the reason behind this, and we touched on that the other day.
The other questions he had, we might have touched on this one too. How big of a percentage of the cap were Kucherov-Vasi big contracts? I can't imagine Julian would ever dish out $17 million to one player, even a superstar like Kaprizov. Do you think he would pay Kucherov-Vasi $17 million if they demanded it, or would they walk?
Unknown. What we've seen with the Lightning. So the Lightning's top players have come up for new contracts around the same time that the cap was basically flat. So we weren't seeing, like bank busting contracts from the Lightning then. But we also have seen Julian. He's like, okay, this is what I'm willing to do. And if you're not willing to meet me and us somewhere close, or where, there's almost a line in the sand where Julian will not cross that line. And if that's the case, we certainly saw it with Stamkos. I don't have the particulars of that negotiation, but it was clear that there was a gap between what Stamkos and his camp wanted and what Julian and the Lightning were willing to offer. And Julian was like, okay, he walked away. So, I mean, Boomer asked very specific questions. I don't know. The one thing I will say about the Kaprizov deal, so first of all, the cap went up. So when you throw out a number, $17 million, a couple of years ago, nobody was getting that because the cap was lower, and your top paid player can only get a percentage of the cap. I think that's part of the CBA as well. Right. So now the cap has gone up, so you can pay a player more. The other part, and maybe Minnesota is thinking this as well, is that the cap is projected to continue to go up, so that $17 million will become less of a percentage as the cap goes up over time, which kind of feeds into the question we had about the McDavid contract yesterday. So Connor McDavid, for whatever the reasons were that McDavid said, I want a 2-year extension and that's it. Part of it might have been that if the cap continues to go up after 2 years, his next contract, he could get even more, theoretically, as opposed to signing an 8-year deal or a 7-year deal, which is going to be the max next year for a player returning to the same team. And by year 6 and 7, the number doesn't go up. The amount that you're paid stays the same, basically. I mean, it may have a little bit of a difference from year to year, but it's not a huge difference, as we've talked about. So the percentage of the cap is going to go down if the cap continues to go up. So there are a couple of ways to look at the Kaprizov contract, and probably Minnesota is looking at it as, we're probably paying more in year 1 than maybe we were comfortable paying, but he's our best player. And, as the deal progresses, this is going to be less limiting in terms of what else we can do.
The Lightning players over the years have shown the ability to take less. Stamkos, most notably, and that kind of Victor Hedman followed suit. Do I think it's going to be something that continues? I don't think you can bank on those things. No pun intended. I don't think you can count on players taking less. And there's a debate going on with the star players coming after Connor McDavid. What are they going to do, and what are they going to get?
Yeah.
Jack Eichel, I know, is one who's going to be up for that interesting discussion. I don't know. There's always, all it takes, as we have seen in life in general, but in sports, all it takes is one to give you a bigger contract than maybe you thought, and kind of sets things in motion. We touched on this. What have you seen so far from Tambellini? High note, that's tough for us fans to get a grasp on since it's more behind the scenes, received well by the team. Yeah, but it's early. Let's
and by the way, I thought I had read this, and I just looked it up. Eichel did just sign an extension yesterday.
There you go. Oh, yeah. There you go. That answers
AAV is $13.5 million, so it's less than what Kaprizov got.
There you go.
But
I heard the argument there in Minnesota that, and this goes back to our conversation we've had with Aaron Portzline with Columbus. Remember that narrative that a lot of people left Columbus because it just maybe wasn't a destination for a lot of stars to stay? Some of that was just maybe not true. Panarin wanted to go to New York.
Yeah.
There were things that happened. However, the article did point out, it might have been Joe Smith, which makes sense because he's covering Minnesota, is that did Minnesota basically negotiate and outbid themselves because Minnesota is not a destination for star players? I mean, it was pointed out in that article that might have been the reason, that they overpaid and maybe were negotiating. They were the only ones negotiating this deal, but that they had to overpay because that's what you have to do in a market that doesn't necessarily attract the top-notch players. So that was pointed out, and you know what? I think there is a little truth to it. If Kaprizov ends up being productive partner for the majority of that contract, I don't think anybody's going to care, but it'll be a problem if he doesn't.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably like that for anyone. Curious to hear your NHL predictions. Who wins the Atlantic? How many points did the Bolts finish with? Anyone win awards?
Jared's sitting next to me. The camera's not on him, but
he's not working.
He's smiling.
He's not working. Get to work.
No, he's very much. He's got his laptop open. He's probably taking incoming questions and parsing.
He's doing
them out
fantasy
for us.
hockey. He's doing fantasy hockey. Come on.
So, look, I think that the teams that are expected to be good are still going to be good. I mean, I'm not big into predictions. Fans who have listened to the show long enough know I often say, I don't have a crystal ball.
Yeah,
I'm not a fortune teller.
A lot.
All that. I know it's part of this medium. Do I think the Florida Panthers are going to have a good team this year? Yes. Do I think the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to have a good team this year? Yes. Do I think those teams are going to have challenges this year? Different challenges, but challenges this year that may be different from years past. Might they finish with fewer points than they did last year, but still make the playoffs? Yeah, I think it's possible. I think taking Mitch Marner off the Toronto Maple Leafs is a significant development. I'm not going to use the word significant blow because maybe the Leafs can figure out a way to kind of cobble things together in his absence in a very productive way. I think Craig Berube's an excellent coach. The Panthers are going to be without Barkov for the entire year, and they're going to be without Matthew Tkachuk for presumably half a year. 3 long trips through the playoffs. I mean, where are they going to be this year in the regular season? They may actually finish with fewer points than they did last year in the regular season, but do I think they're not going to make the playoffs?
Right.
I think they're going to make the playoffs. What do we make of teams that are looking to take a step forward? Ottawa took a step forward last year. Are they going to continue to take a step forward? I like their team, but they have to go out and show it. So, was it Boomer who asked that question? Like, predictions for the Atlantic? I don't know. I mean, this is why they play the games. There are definitely some teams, though. The teams that are expected to be good should be good. And we'll see if some of the teams that are trying to get good or better will be able to accomplish that. But I'm not comfortable at this point without having seen really any of these teams in the preseason. Until I see them, it's hard for me to make an assessment. I mean, we've been talking about Buffalo and Detroit for how many years now? As, this is going to be the year they take a step forward, and they just haven't been able to do it to the point that they've gotten in the playoffs. But I'm sure that you have much more bold takes than me, Greg.
So the only thing I was going to say about the Atlantic, I'm going to just give you a broad brush for the East. I don't know how strong it is this year. You mentioned, do you think Toronto's going to be good? Do you think Florida's going to be good? Tampa Bay. I mean, I think that's going to be status quo. I don't look at the East as favorable as I used to. I think there's some cracks. I think the West collectively is stronger. Is the pendulum swinging back to the West? I mean, how many Eastern Conference teams have won the Stanley Cup the last 5-6 years? I mean, we know in Florida what that's all about. I think the West is stronger top to bottom. I think the East is a little more wide open. And I say that understanding Florida is going for a 3-peat, but we know what that's like in Tampa.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of playing the odds there.
And a 4-peat to the final.
Correct. I mean, it'll be a tough out. We know that. We know they've got good players. The Lightning do too. I don't know if there's much shuffling in terms of the top 3 in the Atlantic. There may. But in terms of who is the head and shoulders best team, I'm not sure it's coming out of the East right now. And I wholly understand we've got 82 games to see what this looks like. But that's just my sense looking at some of these teams and maybe what we saw last year, some of the moves that were made in the offseason. And, of course, there will be some surprises. But that's going to be my initial bold take. From there, in terms of, like, awards and things like that, I don't know. I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine on a lot of that. Let me do our read real quick. And then I want to get to some questions I think I got via email. Tonight, enjoy some Reef Rum, smooth, versatile, and now pouring at every bar at Benchmark International Arena. Order a Tropical Wave or a Lightning Mule and taste why fans are switching. Reef Rum is a premium craft Florida local rum built on authenticity, quality, and easy drinkability. Ask for Reef Rum by name. Go Bolts. Enjoy responsibly. All right. Let me see what I got because I get them via email. Did we get to this? No, this was yesterday. Nick, our good buddy, Said, hey, Dave and Greg, are you guys concerned about the depth scoring this year compared to last? Obviously, a full year of Bjorkstrand and Gord will help that on paper, but it still seems like we're going to need guys like Chafee and Geekie to chip in a lot more. Nick from Cincinnati. Nick, that's a good question. I think depth scoring is always going to be, if not my biggest, I don't want to say concern, but I'm going to be watching that closer than anything else because, in my opinion, I think for the Lightning to go from being just a playoff team to a legit Stanley Cup contender at this point, I think they're going to need some younger players to push and help the core group get over that hump, like we've seen in previous years when they were. So, health of Vasilevsky notwithstanding, that's, number one. Yeah, I do want to see Geekie, Gonsalves, throw Chafee in there. Gord, I mean, I don't know about you, partner. My expectations aren't incredibly high for Gord in terms of scoring. I think his numbers have been dipping over the last 4 years in that department. That doesn't mean he can't contribute. I just don't think he's the Yanni Gord hitting 20 goals that we saw. If he's anywhere in that 13 to 15 range, I think that would be a win. I think we have a higher ceiling right now with Chafee, Gonsalves, and Geekie. And I think collectively, could you get 45 goals out of those three? That'd be nice. Yeah, I think that would be nice. Crozier's different. On the back end, I do want to see how he slides in, and hopefully he plays regularly because I do think he can help on the back end. But, partner, I think for me, if you're talking about Geekie, Chafee, and Gonsalves, 45 to 50 goals combined, I'd like to see. Is that doable? Yeah, I think that's doable.
I do want to mention, I just got word from our friends on the Ottawa side.
Sources.
Yeah, McDermott, it looks like, is out. So Ula Lixell, who played in the Philly system the last few
God bless
years. Yes. His name looks like Ali, but I think he's had a couple of different versions of his first name. But I think as a league, we've reached a consensus. He likes Ula. Ula Lixell. And thank you for the Gesundheit. He is on the fourth line with Nick Cousins and Lars Eller.
Okay.
So that appears to be it. So, there would not be a dance partner in that instance.
No, Lars Eller's
Curtis
not dropping the
Douglas.
gloves.
But Nick Cousins will fight, but I don't know that he's going to fight every game.
I mean, at some
he
point,
may not be looking to fight tonight.
Well, and at some point, too, the practicality of fighting somebody who's 7 feet on skates.
Right.
You start to wonder, I'm really punching up here, and this guy's just punching down.
Yeah.
I gotta have a little height there. I mean, look, crazier things have happened. I get that. Okay, so that's good to know. Code Res on YouTube. Let me open up my text here. Finley's on the bench. He only made this team because he wasn't waiver exempt. He's not an NHLer, in my opinion.
Well, clearly the general manager feels differently. So I think they do feel that Jack Finley's an NHLer. Let's tap the brakes a little bit on these, bold
predictions,
kind of blanket statements.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't even played one game in the regular season yet. I don't mean to dismiss the comment, but, Julian mentioned Finley when he met with the media over the summer as a guy that he was very excited to see this year. I mean, he's seen him every year, but you know what I mean? Like he had him targeted as a guy that, might make the opening night roster. This is back in July when they had the development camp. So
I think Finley, look, his skill set is a nice one. It's also not terribly unique. So if you have a guy who can score, who can fly, there are more reasons to put them in the lineup in today's NHL than somebody who is 6'4", can win some faceoffs, and the scoring, there's a little bit of a ceiling there.
Mm-hmm.
So I go back to, and this is more of the Douglas than it is Finley comparison, but I think the unique skill set that Douglas provides is more of a need for the Tampa Bay Lightning than Finley's skill set right now. and maybe that's what I should have said at the beginning of the show, but specific to this team, some skill sets are a bigger need than others. And I think, no pun intended, when we talk about big, I think that's what Douglas provides, even more so than Finley. And to your point, it doesn't mean Finley's not going to play this year.
Finley is going to play.
He will get in.
Yeah.
He may even get in on Saturday.
Yep.
It just, he's not in the lineup. Some people were thinking, yeah, that's kind of odd. But, you know, everybody else scouts every other player. NHL, AHL. And if you think, and I'll put a bow on it, if you praise the Lightning for finding players in Europe, drafting them in the 5th and 6th rounds when maybe it's not on anybody else's radar, then you have to give them a little credit for finding a guy like Douglas.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you believe they have a talent, an eye for talent, that's just not specific to who they draft and who they develop. It's also who else is out there.
And look, fans are entitled to have opinions, and fans are entitled to have different opinions.
Yeah.
I mean, just in this show, we've heard from 2 different fans, one of whom clearly was very upset that Douglas was in for Finley, and then the other fan who didn't seem to have a problem with it at all. So, look, I mean, this is what makes sports enjoyable, part of it, certainly, and helps talk shows like ours. You know, people have different opinions. People have different takes. But the opinion that matters the most and the take that matters the most as it relates to building this Lightning roster is Julien Brisebois. And I think what you just touched on, like, they don't go about this in a slapdash manner. They do their due diligence, and they have a proven track record of finding, without having high-end draft picks.
Listen,
The Lightning repeatedly have been able to find quality players other ways.
heck yeah.
Free agency, trades. Free agency is also included in this next category, but finding guys in Europe, you know, that have been over there for a few years. So, again, I kind of agree with you that they have the proven track record. I mean, they don't hit everyone, you know, solidly, and certainly not everyone out of the park, but their track record is very good. So if you're a Lightning fan, I think that it's okay to have faith in Julien and his team, that, like, they felt strongly enough about both of these players, Douglas and Finley. They felt strongly enough about Finley that Julien during the summer was like, I'm looking for Jack Finley to be maybe that guy taking faceoffs to the right of the goalie, and felt strongly enough to put in a waiver claim on Curtis Douglas. And not only get him, but get him here and get him into the lineup right away.
I you know what? Sometimes when you talk these things out, you start to find the answers. Nick on YouTube says, "What should our expectations be for Crozier tonight?" I think what we've seen when he's been up here, just pretty solid.
Solid. Yeah,
he's been really good. But I think this is how everybody should be viewing Douglas, and really anybody the Lightning bring in that maybe you're not familiar with. They've earned the credibility over the years of finding players who maybe not are on your radar, but are on their radar to contribute to this team. And there have been a plethora of examples. So this may or may not work out, but I'm going to give Julien and his staff the benefit of the doubt, because we often praise them about finding diamonds in the rough in any draft beyond the 1st and 2nd rounds. By the way, one quick note, Adam Ernie made Dallas's roster. Good for him.
Good for him.
I saw that when I was changing Enzo's diaper maybe a couple of days ago, and I had
Was this one in the middle of the night too?
Yeah, I might have been getting up on my all NHL coverage, but it was talking about Ernie, and he's been kind of one of those players a little bit that's I don't know if he's felt lost since moving on from the.
He's definitely bounced around.
He's bounced around, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was, a 2nd-round pick. A lot of people thought power forward, and you saw some ability there. It just sometimes it doesn't work out with your original team. But hopefully, for Ernie's sake, he does well and gets an opportunity to play, and we'll kind of go from there. Let's get one more question in before we sign off. We'll go a little extra here since it's the opening night. Chris on X, I'm just glad we have the problem of too many useful forwards this year. Glad Julian got so many extra pieces and prospects took steps. I mean, that's true.
Yeah.
They did.
And look,
what did we always say?
Finley's going to play. Douglas is playing tonight. And I think a lot of the guys that went down to Syracuse, we'll call it at the 11th hour, they're going to see time in the NHL this year too. I mean, I'm not wishing for injuries, but I just think that the Lightning have some quality players, especially at the forward position, but not only at the forward position, but it was notable at the forward position. They have a lot of quality players that could play in the NHL, and I think that they would slot in just fine. And I think they're going to get an opportunity this year. More than one or two. I may be wrong about that. If the Lightning stay incredibly healthy and just get on a roll, and this is the lineup that they just throw out there every single night, then there may be a situation where some of those guys knocking at the door are blocked. But we know how an NHL season goes. Guys have to miss some time. And I think it's going to be an exciting year to see some guys make their NHL debuts or at least get some reps at the NHL level.
You need that young blood.
We haven't really seen before with the Lightning.
You need that young blood. And I think they have a few guys in this lineup that can inject that. And that can rub off on the older guys.
Mm-hmm.
It really can. The regular season is long. And you may need your younger guys to carry a little bit here. And it will be nice to see that. All right, so we've got, 3:45, the blue carpet, correct?
Yes.
Where the players and going to making their entrance and interacting with fans. That'll be pretty cool. And then we've got the pregame show starting at 6:30. You've got the game call with Ryan Malone, who is in for Phil Esposito. We hope Espo's doing okay. And then
under the weather.
He's under the weather.
In case you joined us late.
What's he say? Hour-long TV pregame starting at 6. Ford Thunder Alley. So, Steve, appreciate that. And I will have the last call presented by Jack Daniels. Want to get those sponsors
Between Jack
in.
Daniels and Reef Rum, you're going to be...
If only I drank. Now listen, a glass of wine, that would be good. But I'll have J.P. Peterson, Brian Engblom, and Bobby the Chief with me to recap opening night. And you and I will be back at it tomorrow, noon to 1.
Yes, we are pre-taping.
We're going to tape a little
tomorrow.
Bit. Yeah. So get your questions in right after the game. Cigar City Tap Room is where we'll be tonight. Oh, that'll be fun. So I will not see you. I have to leave a little bit.
You got to duck out before the end of the game.
Do I get escorted? Maybe Jared. Jared will escort me. Get him working.
You need your entourage helping
my
you
entourage. That's right.
Make your way to the ground floor and across Ford Thunder Alley.
That'll be great. But we'll do tomorrow taped regardless. We'll recap and then we'll get set for the game on Saturday. Partner, great job.
Sounds good. You too.
As always, Dave Mishkin there. Thanks to Steve Versnick and Jared Johnston. We appreciate you guys participating at Bolts Radio. I am Greg Linnelli. You've been listening to Power Lunch on Lightning Radio.